Hey folks, Ike Eastman here, your host of Eastmans Journal Podcast, bringing you genuine conversations from across the board of different people, maybe something you'll learn, maybe something you'll get inspired by, and maybe something it'll make you think. Today's guest is no different. It's Mike Herne, who is a first sergeant in the Army and is in charge of training the next generation of leaders in the U.S. Army. He goes through some leadership skills. He goes through some stuff that you should be thinking about. Even if you're not leading a team of people at work, you're leading your family, boys. You're leading your kids. You're leading your spouse, all of that stuff. And it can all be used with these leadership skills. He also goes into his deathbed. You're going to love this. No one's ever said this before. It is completely different. It talks about, I don't want to be on a deathbed, which is really cool. And I think this guy's might have been seeing some people that didn't end up on a deathbed and understands death pretty intimately. He also goes through why he hunts. One of the most interesting things about why he hunts and why guys that get out of the military are very attracted to bow hunting. So check those out. Let's listen to Mike and I's very genuine conversation. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Eberly Stock. Eberly Stock is one of my favorite backpacks. Now, I've been wearing their backpack for almost 20 years. They have lightweight backpacks. They have modular backpacks, everything from their main frame, which is just a frame pack that you can put bags on. They have these cool outside called bat wings that you can use. So check them out at eberlystock.com and make sure you tell them Ike sent you. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Silencer Central. Silencer Central, thank you for supporting us. If you would like to support Silencer Central, if you have any interest in a silencer, which I encourage because it is a game changer in the field, check out silencercentral.com. They will walk you through the paperwork online, as well as they can ship that silencer directly to your doorstep. So check them out and tell them Ike sent you. I appreciate you coming on, taking the time. I know you're busy. Obviously, you're at work. I would hope that's what's going on.
Yeah, no, I don't wear this thing for fun. I did at one point, but...
So, Mike, tell me, actually, let's just get into that. What do you do for the U.S. Army?
So I'm an infantryman by trade. So I grew up in the airborne community. I used to jump out of airplanes and all that good stuff. And now I'm kind of at the senior levels. I'm an E8. I just transitioned out of being a first sergeant. So my most recent job was the deputy commandant here at a leadership training academy for the Army called the Basic Leader Course.
So is that for commissioned officers or non-commissioned or both?
Non-commissioned officers. Yep.
Okay, so you're a non-commissioned officer then.
I am. Yep. And
cool.
Then this schoolhouse is kind of the first step of their institutional education as far as the military goes. Before that's kind of like a leader certification. So the units send their soldiers here. They're junior enlisted guys and gals here to kind of be certified as leaders before they get promoted to sergeant and then start taking on some leadership responsibility in the Army.
Very cool. So how long have you been doing the training portion versus door kicking?
Well, I like to tell people I'm a house cat now. I'm an inside cat. The last time I had a real role where I could have kicked indoors was 2018 when I left Fort Carson the first time. And then I went and took an office job, more of an organizational leadership, enterprise level Army job. And so that was however long that's been, close to 5 years, 6 years now.
And where are you stationed now?
I'm back at Fort Carson.
Oh, okay. So you're in Colorado. Nice.
Yep.
That's where actually my brother was almost born there. My dad, when they got done with Vietnam, he was at Fort Carson for a number of time as they were rolling him out to society again after that. So it's a pretty neat place. It's grown a lot. My gosh, I can't believe that place it's a city now.
Yeah, it's a city. It is a city, and I am ready to leave because of that. So,
I was going to ask, are you done? Are you going to move after you're out?
Yeah, I've got about a year and some change until I can start my transition internship which I'll probably do with Aaron up at Kifaru.
Oh, you're going to move to Riverton.
Yes, sir.
So frying pan to the pot right there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's every time I've been up there, I love it. It's just it's the pace of life I want.
Yeah, it's Riverton's not my favorite place in Wyoming. I've lived there. I did 2 different stints there, but Wyoming is definitely a unique place. It's a lot slower, a lot nicer, the weather's a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Riverton, I don't know if you've been in there in the winter, but it can get pretty brutal as far as cold weather.
Yeah. Yeah.
They get inversions. So let's talk about kind of where you came from and where were you born and where'd you grow up and what were you interested in as a kid, and what led you to joining the Army?
Well, I grew up in upstate New York originally. Born in the same house I spent my entire life in up there, real small town. My graduating class was about 60, I want to say 67, 60, somewhere between 67, 69 people. And that's like all the townships around too. So real small rural community. A lot of people here, when I tell people I'm from New York, they automatically go New York City. and I'm like, I'm from where the men are men and the sheep are scared. That's what I tell people.
Can you say that in New York? I don't know. That seems that I say that about Montana, but I've never heard it said about New York.
You can say that about upstate New York.
I know that there's a lot of hillbillies up there. There's a lot of rednecks in upstate, but I never heard them about the sheep.
Yeah, the men are men and the sheep are scared. Or there's some jokes about that's where the toothbrush was invented. Because there wasn't teeth there. But real small community, real small town. Well, small town life. I feel like you either kind of stay there and do the status quo. You find ways to entertain yourself, which is the route that I went, which involved getting in trouble. And so I grew up not knowing my father. So my male role models were kind of the neighbors in the community, and all of them were Vietnam era Marines. So I had all these Vietnam era Marine male role models in my life. And so ever since I was a little kid, I wrote a 5-page paper on the Battle of Gettysburg. And at that time I could tell you what maneuver which brigade did that was strategic to them winning the battle. So I was a little bit of a military nerd as a kid, which is weird coming from a kid that was raised by his mom and his sister. But so that was kind of the direction I always knew I was going to go. Got a little older, discovered women and booze and drugs, and found myself in a little bit of trouble in high school. And then it kind of came down to where it was like it was like, you need to get out of town or you're going to stay here and they're probably going to put you under the jail. So I joined the Army and away I went.
So it's interesting. You grew up male role models was Marines. Typically, Marines breed Marines. I'm surprised you didn't go down that road.
So I tried to go down that road. I started talking to the Marine Corps recruiter first because I was diehard, going to be a Marine, Semper Fi, all that stuff. And then I talked to the Marine Corps recruiter and he's like, well, you got to pick 3 jobs and you might get one of those 3. Like, we'll try to get you one of the top 3 that you pick. And so I wasn't going to join the Army or the military and play the trumpet. You know what I mean? Or turn a wrench, be a mechanic. I didn't want to do that. If I was going to join the military, I wanted to fight. And it was, 9/11 era. So I wanted to get into the fight. So I was like, I'm just going to go next door and talk to these Army weirdos. Right. So I went next door, talked to the Army recruiters, and I was like, hey, I want to be an infantryman. What do I got to do? And they're like, well, we can do that for sure. You want to jump out of airplanes? And I was like, absolutely. I can jump out of airplanes. They're like, yeah, you want to be a Ranger too? And I was like, yes, I want to be all of those things. That's exactly what I want. And like, we can guarantee you that and $12,000. So,
oh my gosh.
I was like, holy cow. Okay, good deal. Well, I thought I had a bargaining chip now. So I was still dead set on being a Marine. So I went back to the Marine Corps recruiter. I'm like, all right, man, look, the gig's up. Those guys next door in that different outfit told me that they could guarantee me this, and they're going to give me 12 grand to do it. What can you do for me now? And if they would have said they could guarantee I'd be an infantryman, I would have took the job from the Marine Corps recruiter in a heartbeat, because that's what my heart was set on. They're like, man, we'll try to get you one of those top 3 choices you picked. And I'm like, well, I'm going with the Army, and I'm glad I did. I'm 100% glad I did. I have nothing against the Marine Corps. Just after getting to be in the Army and see all the opportunities that the Army has compared to the other services, it's really eye-opening, and it's been a good life.
So you obviously jumping out of airplanes. Did you go to Ranger school?
I did. So I enlisted with a option contract, which would have sent me to Ranger assessment and selection, and then to one of the Ranger battalions. But when I actually have this patch right here is the 173rd. When I was in airborne school, everyone was dropping their Ranger contracts and they were getting the 173rd. And I was like, man, that patch looks cool. Guys were talking about them having a deployment, and I didn't know what I didn't know. So I dropped my Ranger contract and went to the 173rd. And I eventually attended and graduated Ranger school later in my career. I never served in a Ranger battalion, but yeah, the wing and the bayonet patch, and I didn't know what I didn't know. I've got a lot of buddies that served in the 75th. I might have a tinge of regret in me about it, but I'm super happy with how my career turned out and how life's turned out. So
did you hunt as a kid in New York? Was that part of the? Okay, because I know you're a hunter. I've just scrolling through social media and hearing funny stories of mutual friends. I know you rifle hunt, you bow hunt, you've done all that. And of course, if you're hanging out with Snyder, you got to be doing that, because I don't know if he does anything else actually.
He doesn't. I mean, chew Copenhagen, but
a lot of that. That's true. There is a lot of that.
So that's about, yeah. And pick heavy things up and put them down. But yeah, I hunted as a kid, but I'll be completely honest. Hunting as a kid was more of a, like, opening day of deer season. Everyone would skip school. They'd go out, sit in a tree, shoot the first thing brown that would walk by, and then you were back to school and sports. So it wasn't something I was super passionate about or got crazy about until later in life.
Okay. So the obviously how did you, or what you've served? Were you in Afghanistan and Iraq?
No, just Afghanistan 3 times.
Just Afghanistan. So I don't know if this is going to mean anything, but I'm supposed to ask you about Blue Eyes. What was that about?
Blue Eyes.
Yeah. Snyder's like, go ask him about Blue Eyes. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Is it something you did in Afghanistan?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, it must have been a horrible story.
Maybe green eye. I don't know.
Anyway, okay. So the Ranger, I guess in the airborne, how did you get into leadership? And let's kind of dive into, you obviously went up the ranks and you're teaching leadership, and I want to get your take on that here in a second, but how did you get there first?
Well, so the Army, and this is one of the things, like, I'm ready to retire from the Army. I am ready to move on, but looking back at the Army and the way the Army functions, everything in the Army is about training your successor, right? Kind of what Scott and I were talking about in the beginning. It's all you want. Like, I want the people beneath me to be better than me in their career. And the Army breeds that servant leadership from the very beginning. And when you join the Army, I mean, the only place to go is either out or up, right? And in order to go up, you have to become a leader. You have to become a leader. So it kind of forces you to figure it out or get out. And so that's kind of how, that's the natural progression of the military. And that's one of the things that's way unique in the military versus, working for like a Fortune 500 company, where the top dog might not want his employees to end up better than him, because then he's worried he's going to lose his paycheck or lose something in the deal. Right. I want my employees to be better than me. I want them to have good lives and be successful at work and to outperform me on a lot of levels, because if they're outperforming me as a leader, that means I have less work to do.
Right.
Which is, it's not a common, I think it's becoming more common now, but it definitely wasn't a common thing, 10 years ago. So that's kind of how it happened. It's just, it's what you do in the military. You have to, in the Army, I mean, there's obviously, Air Force where it's like a lot of technical jobs, but in a combat, I'm an infantryman. So, I mean, all of my jobs beyond the bottom 3 jobs I could have, which are rifleman, machine gunner, and grenadier, every job above that is a leadership position. So it's all about developing people, developing teams, leading teams, and winning. So
you talk about servant leadership, which I love that. I love that term, and you're right. It is being used a lot more in the private sector, in the corporate world. I don't know, maybe not in the corporate world, but definitely in the private business world, like small businesses like mine. You ever heard of Dave Ramsey? Have you heard of that name?
Yep.
So he talks about that in his business, Entre Leaderships, a lot about servant leadership. So can you define that a little bit for our audience? Just kind of, what is a servant leader? Because it's obviously it's an oxymoron as far as words go. It seems weird, and it seems way out of the normal business relationship.
Yeah, servant leadership boiled down in its simplest form is you as a leader are serving those beneath you, right? So the people below me aren't working for me. I'm working for them. I am constantly, I'll use my role here kind of as the deputy commandant. I am constantly looking for ways to give back to my instructors, because my instructors downstairs, you can't see the building, so downstairs is irrelevant, but they're downstairs. That's where our classrooms are. They're the ones doing the work. They're the ones in there teaching the future leaders of the Army. They're the ones working the long days. So my job from my foxhole up here, kind of at the top of the organization, is to find ways to improve their quality of life, find ways to get them a little extra time off if I can figure that out, find ways to make it easier for them to do their job downstairs. So just serving the people that are working beneath you.
So if you're serving the people that are working beneath you, number one, you're teaching them that servant attitude, or I guess you're being a good role model, and also you're showing them, or showing the people above you that you can lead them, which then grows you into a higher leadership role as you train the person below you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then we get evaluations. We get annual evaluations in the Army, right? At the rank I'm at right now, first sergeant, my annual evaluation, most of the stuff that goes on my annual evaluation is not stuff that I have physically done anymore. My physical fitness score, we take a physical fitness test. That'll go on there if I get a high score, right? But a lot of the stuff that's going on my evaluation is the stuff those people downstairs are doing. It's their work that makes me look good. So it's their performance. So I, as a leader, am heavily invested in how can I help them perform better? What can I do for them so that they can do their job?
That's really interesting. So are you married?
No, not married.
Okay. I was just going to tailor that into parenting too, because almost a huge portion of my audience has kids, but it's very similar to parenting. Is you're serving your kids and not giving them discipline, not doing that stuff, you're not serving them well.
No.
And they're not going to be, good citizens, and they'll end up underneath the jail, as you said.
Yeah. And
so
servant leadership isn't just, oh, these guys worked for 22 days straight. Like, let me figure out how to get them time off. Like if they worked for 22 days straight, but their performance was substandard, servant leadership is, after we graduate the class, we're going to go back to work, and I'm going to be in front of you all giving you a class on what, like, if it was, the instruction of a particular class, making sure that they understand that class, or set, like, I'm going to be there making sure that they are better. So that could mean servant leadership can also mean longer hours being there, but you got to be there too. So
yeah, you got to be in will. You got to. I say you have to be willing. You got to be there, and you got to have the hard conversations, like you said, 22 days straight, and you still go back to work because the hard conversation is it didn't work. We have to come up with a better plan.
yeah, exactly.
So when you talk about training your successor, do you have this is a question that I've gotten a lot about the military. Are you told who your successor is going to be, or are you part of that that process of picking that person?
So in a traditional infantry unit, right? My successor in a lot of cases could be someone beneath me in the E1 to, which is the very bottom enlisted rank, to E6, right? But once you get to E7, sergeant first class and above, those people are kind of selected. They're selected by the Army for the jobs that they get. So it depends, but in any case, I'm still I'm an E8, just so everyone kind of understands numbers, right? The people downstairs are E6s, the majority of them. Those guys are going to be me one day. We're going to hold the same rank and position that I hold now. So I'm still training my successor in a roundabout way, if that makes sense.
It may not be your direct successor, but it might be the commandant somewhere else or some other school or whatever. But
or
it's
a first sergeant somewhere. They're going to be a first sergeant somewhere.
Okay.
So
So which is unique in that sense that you're training, they might be not underneath you in 5 years, but in business, I'm training my successors every day because one of these guys is going to do what I'm doing today. And that's just how it works. So that's unique. Do you have a philosophy, if you could wrap it up in leadership, a leadership philosophy that you would put on a t-shirt or in a paragraph?
Man, that's a tough question. I wasn't prepared for that one. I think my leadership philosophy is be a true servant leader. And then if there's a hardship that your people have to endure, you better roll your sleeves up and be doing it with them. And if you're not doing it with them, you better be doing something way more important. But just be there with your people. I mean, leadership, 90% of leadership is presence. So just being there says a lot.
That's really good. Being there, maybe not just physically, but being there, engaged in conversations, engaged in whatever's going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's really deep.
Yeah.
That's really deep. So do you have leader role or leadership rules that you live by? Obviously, be a servant, be present, but is there other stuff that you go, this is a little bit of the secret sauce?
I mean, it's kind of the stuff we just talked about. It's all encompassing and it's so nuanced, but just be there, be present, want better for your people than what you have. And then obviously, this being in a training environment kind of took some of the fire out of my heart, if you will. But the times that like I really get engaged and really get fired up is when a soldier is having a hard time at home, or when I can actually help an individual, right? Whether they come to me for a mentorship question, and that's it. I guess, that be a mentor, be present, and be a servant leader would be. I mean, it's all encompassing. This stuff is so nuanced that we could talk about it for hours.
Right.
And I'm still learning every single day. Like every interaction with my people, I learn something new. Like I probably didn't handle that the right way, or maybe I could have asked questions a little bit different, or said different things. So it's a constant. It's sometimes being able to fall on your sword, because I've made leadership decisions and been wrong plenty of times, and it's hard to go back and be like, hey, I messed that up. But that like kind of gets into a little bit of like Jocko Willink, extreme accountability. Like that's a real thing. If you take accountability for everything, I mean, there's within reason, right? If a guy or gal goes out and gets a DWI, I really can't be responsible for that. But if you take accountability for as much of the organizational task and mission as you can, then your people see that and they're like,
Right.
okay, like I screwed this up, but First Sergeant's up there saying that that's his fault. You know,
right. That's really interesting. So, in that accountability, accountability, which is a fantastic book. Those of you who haven't read it, you need to get out there and read it, because it will change how you interact with everybody around you, and it'll change how you interact with, in a difficult situation. So there you go, Jocko, as a shameless plug, not a sponsor yet. So if you could turn around and talk to your high school self, so this is part of the recruiting side, maybe, or if you, what would you tell yourself about the Army, and what would you tell yourself about life?
That's I've been told I should have been a recruiter. I was a drill sergeant. That's kind of how we get kind of go on two separate tracks. At some point you get called back to go be a drill sergeant or a recruiter. But what I would have told my high school self is that the Army is absolutely the right choice, because it's a bigger organization, and the sky is the actual limit here. Like, had I wanted to in my career and done the work, I could be a helicopter pilot right now. I could be a Green Beret. I could be a Ranger in 75th Ranger Regiment. I could be a physician's assistant. Like, the sky is the actual limit. I'm happy with the way my career turned out because of the way life has turned out. But that's probably what I would tell. And that's what I tell people all the time when I talk to, because I have friends who are like, hey, my son's thinking about, really wants to be a Navy SEAL. And I'm like, well, let me talk to that young man. Right. And I'm like, so you want to be a Navy SEAL? What else do you want to do? Because if Navy SEAL, it's a hard, BUDS is a hard selection process. And if you don't make it, what do you want to do?
Right.
Well, I want to be in the fight somehow. Well, if you join the Navy and you don't make it through BUDS, you're probably going to be scraping rust off the side of a boat. Right. Whereas I can go to Special Forces assessment and selection to be a Green Beret. If I don't make it, I'm still a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division. I'm still in the fight. So that's kind of one of the things that I always tell the younger kids, because Navy SEALs get all the glory from all their books, Jocko. But they get all the glory, and there's just a ton of opportunity in the Army. So
that's a really interesting concept, because it's something that I think a lot of people don't talk about. That you're right. The Navy is a big thing, and it right now it has not all of it, but it has a lot of glamour. But the Army is a way bigger organization, which means there's a lot more opportunity, and there's a lot more. Yeah, there's grunt work too, but there's a lot more things that will fit it depending on what you want to do. If you want to be, technical, like you said, you could be a helicopter pilot or an engineer, or you could be all the way down to, the rifleman. So that's a really interesting concept. I've talked to a couple guys that, and a few guys from the Army that you're right. You don't get enough credit for what's really going on in the world. The Army doesn't, for whatever reason. And it's sad. Maybe it's because it's such a big organization. They don't single one thing out, or maybe it's just because they haven't made a movie about you. I don't know.
Yeah, there's some movies out there, but it seems like the Navy, if it says Navy SEAL, just sounds cooler, right? And then if I'm not taking anything away from Navy SEAls, but just, from an opportunity standpoint, the Army, I literally could have went from an infantryman to being a physician's assistant, a Black Hawk pilot, Apache pilot. Could have flown a helicopter, like the Green Beret, all the way up to Delta Force selection, which accepts all branches of the military, but technically belongs to the Army, and those guys don't exist. And those are the ones doing the real cool work. It's just the amount of opportunity, and then the amount of ability maybe to fall on your face when plan A doesn't work and have a plan B or C. Whereas a lot of guys, and I know guys who have personally who've joined the Navy, die hard, going to be kids I went to high school with, We're going to be Navy SEALs, didn't make it through Navy SEALs, ended up being a CB, which is kind of their version of a construction guy, and then got out because it wasn't fulfilling, whereas maybe they would have been fulfilled if they went the Army route and became a paratrooper in the 82nd or whatever. So
right. Very cool.
That's what I would tell my high school self about the military.
Especially the Army, right?
Especially the Army. Good choice, Mike. Way to go.
So what are you going to do? What's the plan when you get out? I know you talked about working for Snyder at Kifaru. What's the ultimate goal when the next chapter turns?
That's a really big question, and it's something I've been kind of thinking about a lot lately, because I've got about a year and some change left before that happens. I don't know, but here's what I've got figured out so far. I want to be happy. I want to feel like I'm serving a purpose, and I want to build community. Those are the three things that kind of, I know what I'm going to do that. I have no idea, but those are kind of the three things. I want to do things that I enjoy doing, which is hunting, the outdoors, talking about hunting, writing about hunting, taking photos, things of that nature. And then I community is super important to me. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I'm getting to the age where I might not have kids. So the people that I'm going to have are the people in my life. So that's a big deal and very important to me. And then, just have a purpose beyond the military, which I feel, hunting has given me. So I feel like I've got a leg up on a lot of my brothers and sisters who are exiting the Army.
So you talk about community, and you're talking about the people surrounding you. Is there one of the nonprofit vet organizations that you're connected to yet?
No, not really like super close ties to yet.
Okay. One of the reason I asked that is a lot of the guys that I've talked to that come out, that has been a huge success for them, is getting involved in some of that stuff, just because it's like-minded. You're all, former military. So it's you feel like you're at home. And so just curious if you had one.
Today's sponsor is Forever Barnwood. Guys, we have been using this in our renovation of our building here in Powell, Wyoming, and I am here to tell you it is amazing. They are a premier supplier of barnwood across the U.S. Their products come from fresh-cut Wisconsin white pine, which has been kiln-dried way below standard lumber and hand-processed into various products like barn doors, beams, flooring, and wall covering. This type of lumber product provides all of the advantage of reclaimed barnwood at a fraction of the cost, not to mention how easy it is to work with because it's straight lumber and it doesn't have all the waste. Their barnwood products are a renewable resource and come in a variety of widths and lengths, large sizes for countertops, beams, posts, stairs, and railing systems, as well as wall covering and everything else. Their prices are only a fraction of the cost elsewhere, and they can ship anywhere you need it. With their innovative barnwood products, you'll have the right piece at the right time for your special project. So check them out at yourforeverbarnwood.com. No matter what your project is, Forever has. With their innovative barnwood products, you'll have the right piece at the right time for your special project. So check them out at foreverbarnwood.com. And no matter what your project is, Forever Barnwood has you covered. This episode is sponsored by Sawyer Products. Sawyer is a cool company that provides not just great products like water filtration systems, first aid kits, insect repellent, and sunscreen. They also are giving clean drinking water to people around the world. Every time you buy a water filter, be it the small one for your water bottle or the one you hook onto a garden hose, you and Sawyer are helping a developing country with good, clean water systems. Their insect repellent is astonishing. They even have some you spray on your clothes or your pets to keep those creepy, nasty crawlies away. Their sunscreen works so well you only have to apply a few times a day versus every 50 minutes with the other guys. It is truly amazing. So go get some Sawyer products that not only work great, but also give back to the communities around the world. Check them out at Sawyer.com and tell them you heard it at Eastman's.
Well, I feel like, so unlike a lot of my brothers and sisters, and I'm not going to say all of them, but unlike a lot of them that leave, I've already built a community in hunting.
Yeah.
I've got, Scott, Aaron, I've got some really close friends that I've met through hunting, and I know this is going to be one of the questions, but we might just answer it now.
Yeah. Absolutely. Why do you hunt?
But hunting for me, like backpack hunting, adventure hunting, right? Like Eastman's style hunting, right? Is that builds the same exact bond with a person that I build with a guy that I go to war with for 12 months. Yeah. Because you don't build those bonds over the fact that you like doing the same thing or you did the same thing. You build that bond over shared suffering towards a shared purpose, right? So whether it's going on a backpack hunt to help a buddy kill his first bighorn sheep on a once-in-a-lifetime tag that he drew, like he's not going to forget that I was out there carrying the weight with him and humping the mountains with him, and it wasn't my tag, so that bond is very, very, it's identical to the bonds that are formed in combat. And so I kind of already have that with a lot of folks. So I'm lucky in that aspect, and the hunting community to me is going to be that kind of next community. So if anything, I would like to maybe mentor some of the guys and gals coming out of the service once I'm in the position to do so, to kind of help steer them in that direction.
I think you're 100% right. And it's really unique that the guys coming out, they gravitate towards bow hunting. And I think part of it is they're always challenging themselves, looking for something that's a little bit harder. Maybe, I wouldn't say they're 100% bow hunters, but they gravitate to that silent, being in nature, just being a fly on the wall, and then the success. I like how you called it shared suffering. One of the things that I have daughters, they're teenage daughters, and one of the things that before a boy is ever allowed to full-time date one of my girls is they have to go hunting with me, because you get shared suffering, and you get to see them happy, and you get to see them upset, and you get to see them hungry, and you get to see them cold, and you get to see all those different things. Mm-hmm. Who that person is by the time, and even if it's just a couple days, if it's a long weekend, you'll know who that person is by the time you come home.
Absolutely. 100%. That's what Army Ranger School is, right? Army Ranger, it's a leadership course, and it's to teach people to be leaders under duress. They starve you and they sleep deprive you, and you still have to do all the same work, and you still have to lead people. You have to lead people who are starved and sleep deprived. And that's the exact same thing. You get to see, I love that. I freaking love it. You get to see how those people act, and you see people's true colors. Like some of the worst humans, I'll say it for the world to hear, some of the worst humans I've ever encountered are chaplains in Ranger School. Like,
really?
The chaplains, the men of God were, maybe it was just my class, but two of them, and they were the only two chaplains in the class, but one was stealing food from guys. The other one stole a guy's grid fleece, like the stuff that he had to keep himself warm. And I was like, you're chaplains. What are you guys doing? But you get to see that kind of stuff, and you get to see that's awesome that you do that with your girls.
Well, I would say that there's been a couple of arguments about if I should take this one on an adventure or not, and I don't ever have to choose. They'll be like, no, never mind. I wasn't really interested in him anyway. I thought so.
I love that.
So one of the other questions that I ask people is, do you know what a TED Talk is? You probably do.
Yeah.
So if you were able to do a TED Talk, Mike, what would you do it on? What are you passionate about that you could speak for 10, 15 minutes about that would inspire or inform other people?
I would probably, I thought about this at length today after Scott texted me, and I couldn't really come up with the greatest answer. I love backpack hunting, and I can talk about backpack hunting. I've given seminars on how to pack your pack and things like that, but like truly inspirational would just be to kind of follow your dreams and follow your passions. What makes you happy? It doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to get there overnight. You might have to be resourceful. And I'll use myself as an example. 10 years ago, Aaron Snyder didn't know who I was, right? I knew who he was. And now we're pretty close friends. And like 10 years ago, or probably 12 plus years ago, I was just picking up a bow for the first time. And like, now I find myself getting to do a lot of things that I'm super fortunate to do. And I got there in a very there's so many ways to get there now, but I got there in such a non-traditional way. Well, I got there in the traditional way, but in a non-traditional way for today's day and age. So I wanted, once I started bow hunting, I was hooked. And I'd like to come back to that because I got a little bit of the why on why a lot of us military guys, I think, gravitate towards bow hunting. But once I started bow hunting, I was hooked, and I was like, man, it'd be really cool if I could figure out a way to do this for a living. And you got, guys like Cameron Haynes and Aaron Snyder, and I was like, man, I want to do that, but I don't want to talk to my phone all the time or like try to be somebody on Instagram. So I picked up, I didn't pick up. I started typing on a keyboard and writing hunting articles, and got picked up by Black Rifle Coffee, and like submitted some articles to them right when they the owners started to kind of get into hunting. And then, so that's kind of how I got my start in the hunting industry, which is, I feel like writing is becoming a lost art.
It is.
And everyone's vlogging and videos and photos. And I remember when Aaron was doing photography, and I was like, that's gay. I'm never going to do that. Like, that's
not saying that Aaron's not gay, because he is.
Yeah,
but
not saying that at all. But I remember saying I'm not going to do that. And then when I started writing, I was like, man, if I have really good photos with a piece of work that maybe my writing's not the best, the editor's still going to buy that because they want to publish those photos. They can fix my words. They can't fix the art. So I picked up a camera, and now I just spent $1,400 on a new lens last weekend,
What do you shoot, Canon or Nikon?
Sony. I'm a Sony guy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I learned on a Sony because that's what Aaron was shooting at the time. It's his fault. Blame him.
Yep.
And then I learned on a Sony, and I do not, at this point in life, I don't have time to learn a new camera. So I'm going with what I know. I can make it work, and I've got confidence in it. It's like having a rifle with a solid 0, right? So
Sony's a 4-letter word in this office. Oh my gosh. We're a Canon camp and have been for the better part of 30 years. So Sony's not, I'll give it if you're a Nikon still photographer. I get that part, but Sony, oh my gosh. I don't know if we can be friends now, Mike.
I don't know anything else.
Well, you're right though. Once you get used to like menus and understanding their ergonomics, it is hard to change. I will say that, coming from Canon and trying to go to Sony, because there's a couple guys in our office that are holdouts on the Sony side. It is hard. I get it.
Promote those men above their peers.
I can't. I just can't do it. I just can't do it. They're honestly and we can talk about this if you want, but their image stabilization in the video world is horrible. Absolutely horrible for what we do. Their low light's better than Canon, but their stabilization is it's just, we were in Casper 2 weekends ago. We did a film festival there and had a couple hundred guys show up and watch one of our new Beyond the Grids. And there's one of them was filmed solely with a Sony. And I pulled the videographer who was standing there. I go, see, when you're on the big screen, all of that image stabilization is exaggerated. I go, see, I just want to barf right now. He goes, oh, now I see your problem with them. I'm like, yeah. The other one was filmed with a Canon. Not a problem. This one is. So you wanted to come back to why bow hunting is attractive to guys getting out of the military. What's that about?
So growing up, I killed my first deer with an Ithaca Buckbuster slug gun.
Oh my
And,
gosh.
yeah. So there was always there's always an archery season before the gun seasons. And now you can hunt with modern rifles up there, but that was the gun season, right? Was you could use a Ithaca Buckbuster, and I had zero interest in a bow. I could not hit. I remember I would hang a target on this round bale and I couldn't hit it, and I was like, screw this bow. Where's that gun? I ain't got time for it.
Yeah.
No. Fast forward to about 2012. I got stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia, to be a drill sergeant. They had a really good hunting program, and they have a lot of deer and a lot of wild pigs. So I was like, all right, cool. My buddies were like, hey, we're getting our stuff to hunt on post, and we're going to go hunt. I'm like, awesome. So we went out, and I took a 30-06, took my old trusty 30-06 out there and killed a buck, and I shot some feral pigs. And I was like, man, after 33 months in Afghanistan, like pulling a trigger on this animal just doesn't it's anticlimactic. And then I was like, I'd killing deer at that time, like on public land. It was a very frustrating endeavor. And I was like, man, I'd really like to add some time to my season. And then like after picking up a bow and just understanding the discipline, it's very similar to being accurate with a rifle, but there are so many nuances. You have to put so much more work in to be accurate with that thing. Like I can take somebody off the street right now and put them behind one of my zeroed rifles and have them hitting steel at 1,000 yards in under 90 seconds, right? Like probably 3 rounds max. I will have them hitting steel. You can't do that with a bow. You can't put a bow in somebody's hand and say, all right, here we go, and have them hit, a paper plate size target at 80 yards, even 20. So it's so much more nuanced, and you have to be so much more involved in the process. It gives you that sense of purpose. I feel like a lot, like there's kids that grew up playing outside or kids that grew up playing video games. And I feel like I despise video games. The last video game console I owned was a Sega Genesis. And I just sucked at it, but I didn't have the drive to get better because it was just sitting there like this, right? But with a bow, when I sucked at it, I was like, man, I got to figure this out. I got to get better. So I think the anticlimactic part, especially after you've been shot at and return fire, and then the process, the discipline, and the like total immersion into the event, and then it's like you said. Not that rifle hunting is not the same, but when you're bow hunting, you have to be that much more intimate with whatever animal you're pursuing, because you have to be within striking distance with a bow, not a rifle. 100 yards or 800 yards works with a rifle nowadays, but it still takes a lot to get under that 100-yard mark, and then to be able to pull off, not only be under that 100-yard mark, but to be able to get to full draw or knock an arrow and then get to full draw. It's a lot. So you have to be intimate with the animal that you're pursuing. So.
And I'll add to that, not just the animal you're pursuing, but its environment, and understanding where it's going to go next or what it's going to do in anticipation for, what that animal's going to do or what it did do in order to get that under 100 yards and pull off that shot. I 100% agree. It adds a level of complexity that, which drives people. It drives me, and it drives, I know guys that have never been in the military, but that is the driving force. Did they always bow hunt? No, most guys gun hunted, or they picked it up because as we're kids, you're just looking at success, just like you were like, I just wanted success. I want to understand it. And then as I think you get older, that success becomes easier, and you start growing in it. I used to teach Snyder when he first got out, and he was doing a lot of stuff in Colorado. He used to, I think it was a deer. Or no, it was an elk. It was an elk. And it was it was a really funny post. He posted this where he shot this like spike elk, and he goes, I couldn't handle it. I could not handle him walking that close to me and me not shooting him. And I remember teasing him going, Snyder, at some point you'll progress past that. And he looked at me like I had 7 heads. And it's the same thing as archery hunting.
I don't know if he hasn't gotten much further than that. I mean, he is not shy about doing what makes him happy, whether it's spike or I called in the last elk that he killed, which is another like crazy thing that fills me with gratitude. But the last elk that he killed with his stick bow, I called in for him, and it was not a big bull. It was a raghorn 5-point, but you know.
Snyder is Snyder. I tease him though. I said, someday you'll progress into trophy hunting. It's okay. So, you know, one of the things that I'm really excited that you're moving to Riverton, and which means we'll get to hang out a fair amount. I don't see those guys as much as I should. I don't stop in there as much as I should. I go to Riverton a fair amount just because of sports, but that'll be awesome. You got a year and some change. Is that what you said?
Yeah, about a year and some change. So about November of 25.
Okay.
Is when my timeline's looking like it'll line up for me to start my my CSP program, which is career skills program. So it's like an internship.
Are you doing that with Kifaru then?
As long as they let me do it. Yeah, I think so. I think I'm going to do it with them. So
very cool. I think that's such a great program, and it hasn't been around very long, has it?
No, it hasn't. And it really, they, that's why I say if it lines up, because they do the military, the powers that be push back on it a little bit and say it's for the junior enlisted folks. And in some cases they're right. I kind of agree. But my argument would be that the junior enlisted folks aren't as indoctrinated. This is the only thing I know of for the last 20 years, right? So maybe I need a head start. But then my boss is really realistic with me, and he's like, dude, you work for 2 brands in the hunting industry. Like, you already know what you're doing. You don't need an internship. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I don't want to. I would like to do that and get paid by the Army and not wear this anymore. So
you just look at him and go, can you imagine being a civilian trying to manage this?
Yeah.
Trying to manage what you guys have done to me.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good point, Ike. I'm gonna be like, hey, this isn't for me, it's for them.
Yeah, it's really for them
to deal with me.
Snyder doesn't want to be sitting in a dark room with me one night and I snap. That's just probably not a good thing.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna tell my boss that.
So one of the last things, and I don't know if you've thought about this, most folks have that have any age, because we're not in our teens and think we're invincible, but God willing, you have the ability to be on a deathbed and it doesn't happen instantly, like getting hit by a bus or something. What are you going to be thinking about? What's going to be important to Mike, and what are you going to live every day for going from this point on?
Well, so I wrote down a quote from Hunter S. Thompson, because God willing, I won't be on a deathbed. Hopefully it goes quick, and it's kind of in line with this Hunter S. Thompson quote. So, and I heard this quote many, many years ago, and it's always stuck with me. It says, life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, wow, what a ride. And that's kind of,
who was that? Hunter S.
Thompson.
Okay.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So that's his quote, and that always just stuck with me, because I've always kind of, I mean, not necessarily lived life on the edge, but to an extent, I've lived life on the edge, and I have seen how truly finite life is. I have lost friends right in front of me. I've experienced a lot of life in a short 36 years on this planet. But on my deathbed, I think as long as I can look back and know that I made an impact on some people's lives, I don't have to change the world. I'm realistic that I am not, I'm not going to change the world by any means, but I hope that I positively impact the people around me. definitely the people in my inner circle, and then I just go to the grave full of gratitude. I mean, if I got smoked today leaving work, which hopefully I don't mean to put that in the universe, but if I got smoked today leaving work, like right now, I feel like I could be like, all right, you did pretty good on that one, man. Like, and
You're not underneath a jail.
Yeah, you're not underneath the jail. You like on top, but doing pretty dang well. And that's the thing, like probably goes back into the TED Talk a little bit, is what is doing well? Is it owning your own business? Is it just the only thing that I've figured out that I know that I want to be outside of the military is happy with what I'm doing and who I'm doing it with. I want to do cool things with cool people. And the route that I've found that gives me that is September every year, hunting season. Like hunting to me is life at its absolute simplest, and that's why I love it. It's very similar to, I know I'm going on a little bit of a tangent. And
You're good. But this is all great stuff.
Hunting is so similar to combat, because when I'm at war, there's really only like 4 major things that matter: sleep, rest, right? Food, water, and the mission, right? And hunting is the same thing. Once you're backpacked in to the wilderness, my cell phone bill doesn't matter. Whether or not I screwed something up 10 years ago doesn't matter. Whether or not I made the right choice here or there or whatever. All the worries of the modern world are like you realize how truly irrelevant a lot of that stuff is.
Yeah.
And the only thing that matters is food, water, shelter, survival, and hope finding and killing the animal you're looking for. Like your every step you take, if you're on a sheep hunt, in some cases, every step you take is like you're like looking down like, holy shit, this could be the end.
Yeah.
Or it could be a really epic story that I get to go back and tell, and I've seen how fragile life is, and life out there, just it gives me a taste of granted, I go out there with a nice backpack and ways to purify my water and food, but it just gives me a taste of like what life I'm working to live out there, not living to work. Right.
That's right.
And I think that's something that modern society has lost. You ever heard of the book, The Comfort Crisis by Easter?
I interviewed him. He's a very, very deep thinker. Really,
he's an amazing writer. And,
yes.
And, I took some psychedelic drugs in high school, and I had this realization that we were living our lives all wrong. And it wasn't, to this day, I think back and like when I read his book, I was like, this is all the stuff.
This is it.
This is it. This is all the stuff that like, well, I took that LSD in high school, I took that. This is the stuff that I was thinking about, is that like we work for all these creature comforts, but we work our life away. Whereas you look at like the Native Americans, if they work to live, the men's job was food and water, and the women were shelter and clothing, or like they were working to live. That's a purposeful life. So I hope to be able to get back to some form of that. And I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I know every September I get a taste of it. And that's kind of, after September is over, I'm glad it's over. But I'm also like, about 3 days after September ends, I'm like, all right, is it September yet again? I'm ready to get back out there. So
isn't that that's an interesting hunting season, around here. It starts in in less than a week. And we go from now all the way through November, and it's 3 months. And everybody's like, oh, it must be nice to hunt, for 3 months a year. I always tell them the first 2 weeks is a blast. I will say that the first 2 weeks is a blast. And then it starts to become a JOB, because it is every single day, and everything is, the same every single day. But as soon as it's done, it's like 4 days, and I can't wait for it again. And then all of a sudden it occupies my freaking mind again constantly. Like, when is September coming around? When is September coming around? And I think it's, Michael said it's perfect. It's it's part of our DNA. It's who we as creatures are. We are built to work, and built to work so we can live, not live to work. And it is who we are and why we're supposed to do that. And you're 100% right. The society that doesn't get to do this, even if it's weekend warrior, you don't get to do this and understand. They're not mentally stable. They really aren't, because it's in our psyche.
Yeah. It's everyone, everyone walking this earth right now is derived, their relative somewhere down the line was a hunter-gatherer.
Yep.
And they're here because of hunting and a hunter-gatherer. And it goes deeper than that. I mean, people are so disconnected from where their food comes from. And I love hunting because like, I feel like I instinctually get it. I was raised by women, and I'm out here killing pretty decent sized elk with a bow.
Yeah.
It's completely self-taught on the whole bow hunting thing. I mean, obviously the military and hunting people helped, but hunting people is far easier than hunting an animal that is their entire life depends on avoiding predation. It's just like, it's that disconnect is so massive from what life is really about versus it. But I don't know what to do about it. I mean, it is what it is, right? I'm not going to sell my house and move into a teepee up in the national forest.
At least not yet. We'll see. We'll see.
I am going to be on the res soon, but but it's like it is what it is. So I take it for what it is and I always like relish in that experience that like this is living. Like that's what I think. As soon as I'm out there living out of my pack, I'm like, this is living. This is how it's meant to be. And parts of me are super happy that it's not. Parts of me are super happy I get to go home to a house that has air conditioning and heat and a bed and all that stuff.
Running water.
Yeah, running water, shower, all the creature comforts. But it's good to get a taste of it. And then I'm not a hippie, right? Like I'll go buy a steak from the grocery store just as fast as anybody else. But there is something about getting your own food and procuring your own food and being a part of that process from beginning to end. Like packing, like every time I sit down to eat an elk steak, I remember the pack out from that bowl.
Yep, that's right.
I remember the events that led to me getting that meat or deboning it or packing it in game bags or almost being a heat casualty because I was out of water and it was 90 degrees and I was about to fall over. You know what I mean? That's the work that people don't see, and they think we're just heartless killers. And
yeah. Yep. And I'll take it even one step further. It's the photos and the memories. You talk about photos, but it's also the trophies. It's I've had conversations with the crazy sister-in-laws that, why do you have all these stuffed animals? Well, because I can remember the exact time that all of that happened. I know who was there. I can tell you that he just graduated high school. He was 5 years old when he was with me on that hunt. I mean, those are things that instantly bring you back to where you were and what you're doing at that moment. And I'll kind of wrap this up a little bit with, I just took my young daughters to Africa on a safari, and the main reason wasn't just to hunt. It wasn't just to go over there and collect animals. It was actually to show them, number one, that the world is different than America. And Americans actually think different than the rest of the world. We all think the world thinks like us. They don't. No. Number two, I wanted them to see racism in its truest form, that it has nothing to do with color. It has to do with ideologies. It has to do with the way you dress. It has to do with the way you think. It has to do with religion, all kinds of stuff. There's racism everywhere. Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing I wanted them to understand is that there's people that every single day they work every single day just so they can survive that night, every day, to survive that night. And then they get up and they do it again the next day. And it was so eye-opening to see. I've been to Africa 6 times, but it was so eye-opening to see them, or see it through their eyes, mm-hmm. as teenage girls. And it is really, really impactful. Maybe more impactful for me to see it through them than it was my first experience. But you're 100% right. The creature comforts, there is the majority of the earth do not live like we do, where the water you just drank came out of a tap and it's fine.
Yeah.
The majority of the world doesn't get that
Yep.
comfort.
Yeah. I mean, you look at like Afghanistan, like your daughters, the fact that they probably wore blue jeans to school today, and don't have their face covered, and people could see their ankles and probably more of their neck than, that like women are getting stoned to death in different
For that.
parts of the world for that.
We flew through Dubai, and I did it on purpose so that they could get a taste of that culture, a taste of the Middle East, and man, did it produce. I almost got in a fist fight and arrested in a bathroom in the Dubai airport, and I have no idea what it was about, because I had no idea what the guy was screaming at me for, but I did something.
Yeah.
And I think it had something to do with the urinal, but I have no idea.
Because you didn't squat over it.
That's that. Well, it took me 12 hours, because it was my first time in that culture as well. It took me probably half of it to realize, you walk into it's one of the largest airports in the world. You walk into a men's bathroom, and you come to America, there's 25 urinals. You go into the Dubai airport, there's 2 urinals and 50 stalls. And I could not figure out what in the hell, why there's no urinals. Well, it's their culture, and it's, logistics and all that stuff. I mean, some German guy was standing there at a urinal using it, and this one guy was not happy that we were doing that. So whatever.
Could have been the sink.
Yeah. Could have been the hole in the ground, right?
Where I piss in America, man. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, Mike, it's been a pleasure talking with you. I know you're on Instagram. I was flipping through Instagram recently, I think last week, and you have an eye. Your photography is really, really, and it's fun to watch the progression, how you're learning stuff, and you're learning lighting and thirds, and you have an absolute eye, and I appreciate that. Keep that up. It's going to be fun to watch.
Thank
fun
you.
to watch.
That's a big deal coming from you. I'm not gonna lie. I was fangirled a little bit when Scott was like, "Hey, you want to get on a podcast with Ike?" And I was like, "This is a fat baby fart." But legendary, absolutely.
No, I was born into this, and I got the appreciation for what those ahead of me have done. And you talk about backpacks, and those guys, they weren't comfortable back.
Yeah.
So, well, I appreciate your time, and thank you for your service as always. And I can't wait to bump into you in Riverton at the old watering hole.
Yeah.
We'll have to get together.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Thanks for having me, Ike.
Yep. Take care.
All right.